It doesn't say God justifies the godly. And it doesn't say God justifies the good person. Again, in chapter 3, it was well established that there are none who are good in God's estimation. There are none godly. There are only ungodly people. And this is really key. This is really important for us to comprehend. A person must understand and acknowledge that they are ungodly before they can be justified by God through faith in Jesus Christ. Because God only justifies the ungodly. The person who believes they are a godly person, or the person who believes they are a good person and not ungodly, is not really a candidate for salvation, because they're trusting in their goodness. Right? So if you're sitting there right now, and I say this in love, but if you're sitting there and there's a part of you that's a little offended that I'm saying that you're ungodly because you think you're godly, or that you're a little offended that I would say that you're not a good person. Right? You have to come to the place where you acknowledge that you are an ungodly person and that you're not a good person in God's estimation. You might be a good person compared to the person sitting next to you. But in God's estimation, there are none good. No one is good enough to get into heaven. We all fall short of God's righteous standard. And God declares righteous only those who know they are ungodly. Only those who know and acknowledge they are utterly helpless, that they are without strength, like we just read in Romans chapter 5, that they have no way of being right in God's sight on their own, that they're guilty before God, that they're dead in their trespasses and sins. God does not justify a person who does not think they are ungodly. God does not justify good people or godly people or religious people. He only justifies ungodly people. You know, in the Gospels, there's an occasion where Jesus says, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick." And some in the audience, I'm sure, thought, well, I'm not sick, so I don't need a physician. I'm well, and so I don't need Jesus. But really what Jesus was saying is we're all sick because of our sin. We all need the great physician, Jesus Christ. And so a person has to acknowledge they are ungodly to be justified by God through faith in Jesus Christ, because that's who he justifies. He justifies the ungodly. And your faith in Jesus Christ then results in his righteousness being credited to your account. Now look at verse 6. Verse 6, he brings David into the conversation, just as David also describes the blessedness of the man to whom God imputes righteousness apart from any works. Blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven and whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord shall not impute sin. So Abraham was the father of the Jewish people. David was the greatest king in Israel's history. God imputed his righteousness to David apart from David's works. Now, when you think of David, what comes to mind? I think probably two people that you associate with David. Goliath, and who's the other one? Bathsheba, right? David was ungodly. As much as he is honored by the Jews as their greatest king, David was ungodly, I would say, in anybody's book. David committed adultery. with Bathsheba. David got another man's wife pregnant. He got Bathsheba pregnant, and then he arranged for the murder of Bathsheba's husband, Uriah the Hittite, so that he could then marry Bathsheba. I mean, that's some pretty unrighteous stuff that David was doing. Again, I think by anybody's standard. But God imputed his righteousness to David by David's faith. God declared an adulterous murderer, liar, righteous in his sight. Apart from David's deeds, obviously. He didn't declare David righteous because David was righteous. David was unrighteous. And so verse 7, Paul quotes Psalm 32, a psalm of David. After David confessed his sin with Bathsheba, he writes Psalm 32, "Blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven." David's lawless deeds were forgiven by God. According to the law, David should have been put to death for his adultery. There was no sacrifice in the law that you could make for adultery. If you committed adultery, the law said you were stoned. You should be stoned to death. But blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven. Jesus Christ removes our sins completely through his shed blood on the cross, and our sins are forgiven.